If you clicked on this video, you probably have an idea of the answer. How could one of our greatest comedians to date never have a chance to release a comedy special? Bernie Mac would lose his life on August 9, 2008 at the age of 50. The former king of comedy would make a name for himself through stand-up with unforgettable moments on Def Comedy Jam and the original Kings of Comedy. But even some today don't realize that Mac never released an official solo comedy special. 30 to 60 minutes of him on stage, detailing his life, what he's been experiencing, and introducing himself to a larger audience with mic in hand. Which caused us to start researching. What took place before his passing that added to his comedy special not being released? Enters Janice McCullough, Bernie's daughter. Janice would have a front row seat to seeing her dad's early career start to where he would land things later. And it seems that Mac's late rise in comedy would be a factor as to why he never had a chance to release a special to begin with.
He didn't reach the height of his career, so he was like pretty much well into his 40s.
Mm-hmm.
I think had he gotten that back when he was in his 20s, it'd be a different story.
One thing that we have to notice is that the other original Kings of Comedy, in fact, had an earlier rise than Mac. If you can recall, Mac even joked about not having a show compared to his peers. You see, Mac was a late bloomer when it came to comedy. Executives struggled to see him in the same light of comedians like Eddie Murphy, Chris Rock, and Martin Lawrence. In 1998, he would team up with Steve Harvey, Cedric the Entertainer, and at the time, Guy Torry before D.L. Hughley entered the picture to begin the original Kings of Comedy. Most professional comedians land their first ever solo special in their late 20s to early 30s. And by the time the original Kings of Comedy made it to theaters in 2000, both Steve Harvey and D.L. Hughley had already filmed half-hour solo comedy specials in 1995 for HBO. Cedric the Entertainer would eventually get his solo special years later. For many stand-up comedians, having a stand-up special is a rite of passage. And in the early days, it would be a way a relatively unknown comedian could become a household name. Specials at one point were special, unlike today, where you have networks handing them out like club flyers. According to Janice, her dad didn't really get noticed by Hollywood until later in his career.
He started his comedy career. Comedy wasn't what it is today.
Okay.
So, I'll say like in the early 90s, because that's when his career really started to gain momentum. In the early 90s, comedy specials weren't just dropping from comedians like that. You had to have been like a huge comedian to, Robert Townsend and Partners in Crime, they had their special. Damon Wayans had a special. Sinbad had a special, but he wasn't at that level yet. If you look at his career, there's always like this one thing that happened that snowballed him and propelled him to the next level. So in terms of like him leaving, just becoming a local Chicago well-known comedian, it was Def Jam.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the second Def season. Mm-hmm. First season, it was okay, but people weren't just like, oh yeah. It was the second one. I ain't scared of you, motherfuckers. You did that, and then that snowballed into film. And then Who's the Man? Above the Rim, House Party 3, that happened. And then Original Kings of Comedy came. And once that blew up, that just snowballed and propelled him into everything else. And he got the show, and from there, it just took off.
When things did start to take off for Mac, he would finally land his own show in 2001. It would ultimately be a career win. However, given the way Mac moved, this looks to have prolonged his time to craft out a solo comedy special. In a 2002 interview with Charlie Rose, Mac would share insight on how he pretty much paced himself when it came to his career. Kalita Smith, who shared the screen with Bernie for his show as his TV wife, would confirm how dedicated and how hard Mac worked on the show.
The workhorse that he was preparing and gearing up for his, when he got to stand up, when he was getting up, his whole business model or his whole business persona was get it done. I think he left too soon. I think there was probably a whole lot more in store, as artists, you don't know how to walk away. You don't know how to quit. You know, so you got to keep reinventing yourself, keep doing things that, you know, keep that fire going, keep that stimuli, you know. I would absolutely believe that it was a special in store for him.
To create a good special, a true artist must take their time. And despite the growing pressure he had with releasing a special, Mac appears to have been someone to remain cool under the pressure. He was playing the game on his terms. The timing had to be right, and after a few seasons of his show, Mac was ready to finally deliver an hour of him on stage, as noted by his daughter.
During the time that he passed, like when his health really started failing, he was in the planning stages of a comedy special. He wanted to call it The Mac Man Cometh and I'm Bringing Hell With Me. And he wanted it to be a small, intimate special. He wanted to hold it at the Harold Washington Cultural Center here in Chicago. And he was in the beginning stages of talking about that, because at that time he hadn't done stand-up in almost, it had been about what, eight years, I think.
Unfortunately, however, at the age of 50, Mac's life was cut short, and fans never got the special that some till this day still thinks exists. Despite not having a chance to release his solo comedy special like George Carlin, who released over 10 specials before his death, Mac is still debated as being one of the greatest stand-up comedians to date.
I love Bernie Mac.
Jack, I love Bernie Mac.
I told you I thought Bernie Mac is one of the funniest.
No.
comedians.
You didn't say one of. You said you thought he was the best that you'd ever seen do it.
So we only can speculate for now. What impact would Mac's special have left on the game of comedy? What shift would have taken place if he was still with us? What would he have joked about? So many questions. But one thing we all can agree, it would be funny.